Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Auzubillah Shaitanir Rajim. May God protect us from the curse of one. Rabbi Firli. My Lord, forgive me for my sins, those that I am conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. May God guide me to the direct path. Guide us to the direct path. All right. So, hello everyone. Officially welcome to today's lecture. Today, I was curious to explore and share through, somewhat of the research I've done online to share with the viewers arguments for why God is testing us. Now, why do I find this to be important, and what kind of person are you listening to right now? You know, that means if someone listened to my lecture and they came and told me about it and I was somebody else, it's as if I'd be like, okay, how is that person looking at life that you're listening to? I want you to consider that whatever view you have on life, there's that. Like you have access to that view. And who you're listening to, who is engaging a specific view. But this specific view to me is the fundamental. And so it's this notion that I'm kind of speaking to those human beings that feel being in this world is equivalent to being inside a simulation. Now, in this simulation, there are levels of power. So, you as a human being look at an ant, for example, a lesser simulated entity that has a lifespan, like and you compared to that ant, because of your ability and capability to acknowledge reality, are somewhat like a higher power. So what that means is when a human being looks at an ant, it's like a higher power. And now I'm saying, is it too far fetched to think that what if the human being is an ant and there is the presence of a higher power in this world? Now the only difference is, okay, that this higher power in our world is a creator higher power. So a human being did not create an ant, but it is in a position where it has a higher power than an ant. So if you find yourself in a world where you can look up and look down, you can see lesser life forms with lesser capabilities than you, then you as a human being must wonder the opposite to some degree, to wonder what am I a lesser power to? I think this is an important question to ask. Okay, that means if there were aliens living among us on Earth, right? Like human beings would want to know, right? And if there, when it comes to the human experience of the different positions there are, on some level, yes, the human being is a physical entity, but while it's being a physical entity, it is simultaneously receiving itself as awareness to the moment. So, right now, you are a type of being that you are aware how you are an object, but you're also aware of how you are a subject. And there is a distance between the awareness of the object and the subject, and there's a distance between the unknown viewer within that is aware of the object and subject simultaneously at the same time. You know what this means? That this means that it's like the object and subjective aspects are yourself are external to an inner you. This is important to consider, but this doesn't mean that we can know our soul. As a Muslim, I treat the Holy Quran as source code, which would be equivalent to if, like, a human being had created ants, okay, and or let's say a human being creates a city of androids and then, sends an android out of all of them, a patch, an update, and that android begins telling the other androids that, hey, we have actually been designed by intelligence that is not the same intelligence as we are, which is one of the most sophisticated things of views that a human being can have in a world room, in a situation. So, where I'm going with this is that the modes, the kind of attitudes we have in life is all about what you're considering to be the power of the moment. If you consider yourself to be the higher power, life is going to show you you're the lower power. Be careful. I understand that the ego is kind of afraid of what's going to happen, so it, in some sense, needs to own reality to feel it's in control of reality. Now, where I'm going with this is simply this idea, okay? It's this idea that first I'm trying to establish that you're inside a simulation. It's a simulated testing zone. You're simultaneously inside a divine surveillance state. I'm trying to give you the metaphor that the vibe of this, it's not the same for the human experience, but the vibe of this is equivalent to if, like, human beings had created a world of androids and the androids began wondering, what are they more than how they have been programmed? And this is the sign of true intelligence. When you begin to wonder not how you have been deceived, you begin to wonder how perhaps there is a deception here. And when I say deception, we get to think that it's like somebody is deceiving us, but it's a matter of having a contrast between that which is original and that which is not. There is this term in theology, I would say more Christian theology, where it's the idea of original sin. And the idea of original sin is equivalent to there being a creator creating something original, and then some entity simulating itself as a serpent or something else. And in some sense, the early humans, Adam and Eve, being deceived. by a simulated entity. So man wasn't, he failed the first simulation, the first test, and so we, as the descendants of this process, are in the second test. So it's as if the original sin was listening to the unoriginal, was listening to a simulated entity, an entity that if it showed its true form, Adam and Eve would freak out and be like, "What is this?" You know what I mean? Right? So where I'm going with this is simply to suggest to you that there are billions of human beings on Earth currently that they acknowledge that there is the presence of a higher managerial, a higher administrative system, a process here. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, what I'm doing for this episode is, it's this episode is also an exploration for me. What does that mean? That means today when I came and like set up my laptop and I was like, what am I going to talk about? I asked myself and I wondered about my like myself honestly, and I was like, wait a minute, if I am in a simulated testing zone, what am I being tested for? If you find yourself in the middle of an exam room writing stuff on a piece of paper, what are you being tested on? Right? So that's the thing. It's kind of like, you know, in the educational system, most kids study and then they go do the test. But the thing about life is that you couldn't study for it, you couldn't prepare for it. It's life. So, anyways, to conclude, I'm pretty much a human being, sees this world as an existential system, has realized that there's a system admin to it. The system admin is not limited to the system, which means the creator of the world is not limited to what we are aware of in the world, in the same way that if somebody puts a box over our head, what we see in the box cannot explain that, right? Now, honest opinion of what God is testing us on is, I personally, when I think about, again, going back to the idea of original sin, it was the failure to acknowledge the authority of the origin. Okay, that's why we're all like theologically here. But to me, as a simulated entity, like what's cooler than this? You're a fake character in a fake world created by an original creator, original power. You understand what it means? That means it's so bizarre, right? When you ignore it and you just have the perspective that it's like a human, you're just a human being on earth, the story is kind of dulled down, right? For me personally, I would say that it's to notice the higher power. This world has not been designed so we stop sinning. It has been designed so our sins take us to moments where we realize we are limited. And once we acknowledge our limitation and accept it, we can notice that which is beyond our limitation. That means somebody claiming they are God may never be able to actually experience that reality. And when I say that reality, you're going to be like, what do you mean, experience God? And I will tell you, it's kind of like this. Imagine you go to a store, you go to a coffee shop, okay, and you're waiting in the line of the coffee shop, and suddenly it's your turn, and the lady at the cashier is like, "Hey, what do you want, sir?" Right? And imagine instead of you, like, acting your part, accepting you're a customer in the store, instead you're like, "What do you want? What do you want, ma'am? I work here." Right? And the lady's gonna look at you and be like, "You don't here. Why are you acting like something you are not?" And as long as you act like you work there, you can't be a customer as on the other side of the cashier. So it's very important, ladies and gentlemen. You have been entered a world where you're living two simultaneous lives. When you zoom into it, you are living you are present as an objective existence, but you are subjectively giving meaning to the subjective existence. And this whole time, they have duped you. They have this. Let me tell you, it's not like they. It's not like a group of people who are like, "Yo, man, let's put boxes over people's head." It's not like some shit, like stupid shit like that. What it is that it's the condition of the design of how far the system has gone so far. You understand? If I was born 400 years in the future, this would be a different discussion, a different lecture. But I am born in 2025, where I see that every human being is following an endless to-do list of survivability. You understand? It's like we're kind of scared. We're like, "Yo, man, I want to stay here in this world a bit longer, right?" But at the same time, why are we in this world? You understand? We don't know why we want something, and that's the simplest explanation of how you're brainwashed. You understand? I'll give you an example. When I was young, okay, television, media, magazines had brainwashed me. Okay, and let me tell you how. They had brainwashed me in thinking that the value of a woman was in her physical existence, to a point that it's as if when I saw a beautiful woman, right, like a woman I was attracted to, it was as if I forgot about everything else. It's like, you understand what I mean? Like somebody who hasn't eaten in days suddenly finding food. You understand what I mean? And that was the freaking brainwashing, right? And a lot of young guys, like, I'm not saying this in any way, because to me, when it comes to the idea of man and woman, they're 100% equal as an idea on a subjective basis. But on an objective basis, they're not equal. They're kind of here to do different parts, different roles. Like if you had a spaceship crew, the crew members wouldn't all be like steering the wheel, but like, you know what I mean? They all wouldn't be like doing the same thing, right? That's kind of how civilization isn't advanced, because everybody's doing the same shit. Like, I mean, obviously it's like there's something off there. Okay, but anyways, aside from that point, what I'm trying to tell you is that as a human being, the main focus of our experiences is intelligent relationships. I've termed this, you know, your intelligent interaction levels, because it occurred to me that I would pay anything for, in some sense, to have an intelligent communicative experience with a higher intelligence than my own, compared to just being rich in a limited world. So, anyways, guys, I'm building it up here. So where I'm going with this is this. As an entity in this world that is living two simultaneous lives, an objective existential life and a subjective experiential life, you are actually influenced by not one world, but two worlds of value. We act like we're physical creatures, but if you were a physical creature, you should not be affected by any thoughts. What we are, because you can think, you are not a physical creature. And let me tell you why. Okay? Because you can get influenced by that which is not physically there. That means you could be about to go into a store, right, and open a coffee shop door, and somebody comes up to you and tells you, "Hey, man, the coffee shop is closed." You understand? That information can shift you. That information is not physical. Knowledge is not physical. Let me tell you why. Because it's the relationship with an object as a point of attention. When I see a picture, like let me see, like right now, I'm looking at a sign of a convenience store. Okay, it has the word convenience written on it. What I'm actually looking at is just atoms and color pigments. But the shape of those letters translates into my mind as convenience. What happened right now? I use non physical information to reform my physical life, which is proof that you're not a physical entity because you're influenced by your imagination, which is not physical. So this is the epic proof that, bring every atheist and, it's like, I'll reform. The notion is simply this: if you were purely physical, you should not have subjective meaning. You should not even be able to notice subjective meaning. You should not be able to even be able to call yourself a name right now. So it's obvious that the human condition is so unique, and it's obvious that we have been brainwashed to think that reality is only going forward in accordance to objective values. Bullshit. It's freaking bullshit. They brainwashed you. Okay? And let me tell you what I mean by they. It's not any person who's alive now. And somebody's gonna be like, yo, Mr. Within, what about the conspiracy of the elites? I'll be like, they don't know shit. Let me tell you why. This system you're in is a system where you had to enter it at some point. Before you entered it, there were others in the system, which means that before you entered this world and started having your own subjective values on it, there was a subjective systematic complexity. That means I have no clue what my great ancestors did, but I am living in the aftermath of their efforts. So just because civilization right now, why do you think I call it civilization 1.0? Because it's a goddamn prototype. It's a prototype. It's our best so far. It's our best so far to be human beings that wake up every day, go get a coffee, and go do labor that robots can do, rather than in some sense having advanced research stations all over the planet and having an incredibly advanced species, in some sense wondering about all its possibilities in the outer and inner realms. Would we do this? Civilization has convinced itself it's an object, so its subjective evolution, in some sense, is not consciously evolving. You are in some sense being treated as a machine more than you're being treated as the creators of them. Man has an ability to create a process. When I look at this coffee shop, somebody was like, okay, put a freaking machine here on this table, and people lined out behind this cashier's desk, and that's it. And they wasn't nothing. It was like a system. It was a process. And the process came about. If the process worked, it grew. Anyways, I haven't even got into the core of the lecture yet. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to tell you that the position I'm looking at reality is a position that you cannot avoid the objective data, the objective value systems. I can choose to imagine, yo, man, they could come up to me and be like, hey, man, who are you? And I'll be like, I'm the kind of being of pure light, bro. And they'll be like, no, man, I can see you. You're not glowing. Right? So we can't avoid existence. So the solution is not avoiding existence. Oh my God, guys, thank you for letting me know in the chat section. It's the input volume. It happens. It happens when I do that. It should be so much better now. Oh my God, I totally apologize for the input sound settings being off, but it should be super louder now, and you should be able to hear, you know, the voice of a fellow species member. And anyways, let me keep going with this. Okay, I'm building something here. What I'm trying to tell you here, first of all, whoever's in the chat section, thank you so much for letting me know. Like, if you have any questions, you know, as a form of compensation, I will answer. Anyways, let me go through with this. I am looking at this world, and I'm like, okay, I've entered this world, and I'll be like, okay, sure, I have emotions, I have desires, I have expectations, I have all these things I want from the world, but what is it? Okay, and the system I've come into conclusion. That means I want. You know what I did? My mind lives ahead of me, and let me tell you what I mean by this. I'm not married now, and I don't have like my own family yet. You know, but in my mind, I've ran forward. In my mind, I've wondered what kind of person I will be. Do you understand? Right in the future. And I reached a point where I had to ask myself, what value proposition to reality are you accepting, oh human being? And you know what that value proposition is? I had to look at all the desires, all the things I wanted to achieve in the world, and ask myself, what is the value of that? And I had to also look at this world and be like, if it's a simulation, if it's hollow, do you know what I mean? If it was fake, did I deceive myself? You understand? A part of me wants to actually su- succeed in the actual system, in the main operating system. You understand? It's like if I'm going to be living in a world, right, and if I'm going to be putting effort here, right, then my effort must go to the most important value. But the most important value is not in the world room. So it's like there's a box over my head, right? And I'm like, yo, man, what's the greatest thing I can do? But I know deep down that there's a box over my head, which means I can go in this simulation, you know, in some sense, I have all my desires and expectations on reality fulfilled, right? But it doesn't mean I did the right thing if I was in a world that was hollow to begin with. You understand? So a part of me is like, yeah, sure, I gotta honor my strengths. I gotta kind of, continue on the legacy of my DNA. It's like my parents lived for something. And I must live for some more than just myself. That means the greatest creation of man is man. You understand? That means it's like a woman could be an artist, and they could be like, "You're the greatest artist. What is the greatest thing you've created?" And the answer would be another human, right? Why? Because the sophistication of what the human being can access to surpasses anything we have created so far. Okay, I'm not talking about external technology. I'm talking about the position of the human being, and in some sense, what is its counter attack? Okay, that means like in a similar to a Shingeki no Kyojin vibe. I am saying what is the species, the counter attack of the species to the massive boxes placed over its head. I want you to imagine civilization was super advanced right now. If a force, if some entity or power was coming to unadvance our civilization, with what sort of might would you respond? That means, let me tell you this. This might be, you know, less natural to the female, like our female audiences. But let me tell you the psychology of how in every man, whether they know it or not, I think not only in just men, but in just how men are conditioned. Let me attribute it to the conditioning. One cannot avoid the conqueror spirit. This is why every person has desires and they have a relationship with the mission of their desire. It's about intensity. You see, you cannot ignore the intensity of life, similar to how men back in the day, when their kingdom was at war, they're like, "Holy shit! There's people coming to kill all of us." It's like grab a sword and shield and go slam them down, right? So what I'm saying is there was a certain call for intensity. That means you could have been a baker, right? Like baking. People are like, "Oh man, your bread is amazing," but suddenly the king, shouts at everybody, "Prepare for war." You understand what I mean? And you had no choice. You're like, I used to practice sword fighting with baguettes, but now I'm holding a real sword. So it doesn't matter if you are a baker. When the intensity is called upon you, you become the archetype for it. Okay? And the question is, what is the intensity that is called upon, that is calling us now? Right? We're not at a time where, I mean, sure, there is war going on the planet, but the war is stupid. Why? Because the leaders of the war are smarter than the war itself. Do you understand what that means? That means I propose the solution to like war, in some sense, make war illegal. First of all, right? And then the second thing is all war. Imagine like two countries want to go to war. You're going to hire, the United Nations is going to hire the greatest video game developing companies, and they're going to create the exact militaries of each nation, and the two leaders go on, fight it out, and then whoever wins wins. Right, so eventually one person accepts they're a loser. You understand what I mean? It doesn't. We don't need the lessening of human intelligent capital on Earth. For the sake of two people trying to do what's best for everybody. Do you understand? Like to me, it's so bizarre. The leader of countries are how do I? Anyways, I don't want to. Anyways, going back to this. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get your attention to is to consider that reality is a simulation. As a simulated being, you are being offered the simulation itself, you know, and you're also being offered that which is beyond the simulation. But that which is being offered beyond the simulation requires you to accept the limit yourself. That means it's kind of funny when you look at a religious person. Okay, it's like, how do I say it? The being is accepting they're limited in the presence of a higher power. But when you look at those beings who don't consider the higher power, what do you see? Can you imagine, guys, like being a baker back in the day, and your young son comes up to you, Dad, I want a sword. And the baker's like, son, you're too young for a sword. And the kid's like, no, Dad, I want a sword. And the baker's like, what do I do? And the baker looks at like some old stale baguette that has turned into like stone. And it's like, here, son, go beat your brothers with it. Can you imagine like a baker, holding an imperial swordsmanship academy, where the kids are learning like at a young age how to fight with baguettes. Anyways, back to it. You human beings, all of you, including myself as well, we're inside a simulation. There is many surveillance states right now in humanity. We have the idea that there will be a futuristic technological surveillance state, like drones everywhere, right? And then we have the idea that there's a natural surveillance state. That means you think when I give a talk, like if I haven't yet, I've given a public talk once in my life, right, on stage with a microphone. But if I was to do it in front of like millions of people, I'd be like, okay, I'm inside a biological surveillance. That means there is something looking through your eyes. Even right now, I'm inside a natural surveillance. Nature is aware of what's in it. If I go into the Amazons, right, and I'm watching, and all the animals and insects and everything is aware I'm there, okay, inside a natural surveillance state. But when we say a divine surveillance state, equivalent to an ant noticing a human being, it's in the sight of a human being. Okay, it's like we're being watched by a being that's more intelligent than us. Okay. Now, getting to the lecture after a 36-minute intro, context building. I want to read for you something that I asked AI. I told you this episode is me exploring. Okay, so I asked AI a question that wasn't written properly, but I said, I want you to imagine you're an expert on human understanding and knowledge. I want to know the most sophisticated arguments and reasons for why God is testing humanity. And I love it. Anyways, I'm going to read this for you. I think it's important to acknowledge it. The reality is not about just having a knowledge you can claim. The reality is about being like, okay, what's actually Doesn't matter what my opinions are. Let's look at how far we can see. So, anyways, what I'm going to say next is I'm reading AI. To answer this at the highest level of human understanding, philosophically, theologically, and metaphysically, requires weaving insights from Islamic Kalam, Christian theology, modern existentialism, and even systems theory. Below are the most sophisticated arguments for why God has some free will, structured in a way that connects to both classical and contemporary minds. Okay, thanks. But anyways, and keep in mind, guys, I am Muslim because I acknowledge the system admin to not be bound to anything in the. That means a person cannot be an admin to me, but to the system admin, anything is possible. Okay, point one. So we're looking at why God is testing man and AI is getting banned. The test as a mirror for self-realization, the ontological reason. Argument. God does not test man to learn something new. God is omniscient. Rather, the test is a mirror through which the soul sees itself. Free will enables man to author his own moral story. The test is not informational for God, but transformational for man. Here it has a quote from the Holy Quran. In the Holy Quran, it says, passage 67:2, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, He created death and life to test you. Which of you is best indeed? So the Holy Quran, which I treat as source code pointing to the main operating system, is saying that we are created, life and death has been created to test us, which is kind of unique because it doesn't mean we have been created to die. Death has been created to test the soul. Completely differently. Now, I'm going to give you an example here. I asked ChatGPT to give an example in earlier pops. So imagine you're in a room with a perfect mirror. You lift your hand, it lifts. You bow, it bows. But one day the mirror shows something else, your true self. That's what God's test does. It shows not the outer self, but the hidden capacity of your soul. I mean, guys, theologically speaking, we are the creations of the Almighty in all dimensions, mighty. Okay? Now, this is very interesting because it means we are highest quality and highest resolution creation. But do you know this? No, you're being given a value by your society, by how people like or dislike you. But you, religiously speaking, have been created with an ultimate value. That means I might, like a person, if they ask you, Mr. Within, is God talking to you right now? I'll be like, no, God is not humanized to talk to me like that. But my connection to how I was created by the All High, by the Most High, is in. You understand what that means? It's like you're a prince. I mean, this is a metaphor, but it's like you're a prince, right? They're like, "Yo, man, are you royalty?" And the person's like, "I'm not a king, but I was created by a king." Okay, so in the same way, man is not the original, but he was created by the original. And man is being watched by the original. Divine surveillance state means that the knowing of reality is beyond the ignorance of it. We go to the second point. Why is God testing man? The value of virtue requires freedom. This is the moral argument. So the argument is this: without free will, no virtue has meaning. Love, honesty, courage, these are only valuable if they are chosen, not programmed. A world without testing is a world where goodness has no price and thus no weight. C.S. Lewis says, in quotations, God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from Himself because it is not there. There is no such thing. So, what would be an example for this? If a robot says, I love you, it means nothing. But if a human struggles, doubts, resists evil, and still chooses to love, that love shines like gold in fire. Testing makes love real. You understand? It means that by being tested rather than all being a perfect program, man has an ability to, in some sense, have a depth to his virtue. You understand? That means if I was a robot, I'd be like, I love you. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, okay, what? Yeah. But if the person has understood, you see, like in programming, there isn't growth. Not that growth is just the point of reality, but I'm saying like it does make sense that if I was a robot, I would not know the value of love. Anyways, we go to the third theological purpose, existence as a stage for witness. Argument. According to Islamic and Christian thought, this life is a stage for humans to witness themselves before the day of judgment. Thing is part of the evidence of your soul's sincerity. You are the actor and the audience. You cannot claim loyalty without the stage of hardship. In the Holy Quran, passage 29 2-3 says, we shall certainly test you to reveal those who are truthful and those who are liars. This is another way of saying the system admin is testing the users in the system to see those who are original and those who are fake. The sin of Adam and Eve was they listened to the fake, they listened to the simulated, they did not, they forgot the original. An example for this is here. It says someone claims to be loyal to a cause. They're not truly known until they are tested under pressure. This life is that pressure. This life is that pressure where words are tested by actions. So if I right now say, I'm the most advanced human being on earth, imagine. But if I'm not living in an advanced way, it's as if, like, do you understand what I mean? We are being tested so we can truly know ourselves to some degree. And this is something, for example, like, people are being tested on different things. If somebody wanted to test me, okay, is this guy a speaker, a lecturer, they would have to teleport me and throw me on a stage. And suddenly I'd open my eyes with a microphone in my hand. I'd be like, okay, am I prepared or not? And I would probably be prepared. Why? Because to me, it's not that knowledge is something you gotta accumulate and tell people. The knowledge is out there. Everything is here. Okay, the puzzle is here. We just have to zoom in and zoom out to kind of see which pieces we're working with. We go to the fourth reason why God is could be testing us systematically. So a system designed for ascension, systemic reasoning, argument. In the grand architecture of existence, testing is a mechanism for ascension. Like soul dash level physics, tests allow beings to rise or fall. Without it, the universe would be static. The test is the ladder, free will is the step. So, what would be an example of this? Think of a video game where every level is locked unless you solve puzzles. Earth is a level where the soul either ascends to higher dimensions of being or remains stuck. Yeah, see, from a theological context, it is said that man's position, is neither beast nor angel. In Islam, there's this very interesting view that the angels come to God and they say, God, You had already created us, beings that are perfect, beings that are sinless. And keep in mind, guys, in Christianity, you acknowledge the devil as an angel, but in Islam, you don't acknowledge Shaitan as an angel. Shaitan was a pious jinn, which means it wasn't an angel. It was made of smokeless flame, but it was so pious that it was close to God, to the systematic. Okay, but there was a disagreement that Shaitan's sin was that it so Shaitan was descended. That means look at the life of Shaitan, the view perspective from Shaitan. Shaitan didn't like man, chose not to bow to man, and was condemned to tempt them to the end. You see what happens to you when you go against the higher power. You're condemned to that which you dislike. Do you understand? But anyways, the whole point of it is that the original is where the value is. Everything else is simulated. The mods are simulated as well. Everything's simulated. Anyways, so that means if a higher entity in this world, like imagine like some glowing alien comes up to me and it's like, hey, let me tell you the truth. I'll be like, get that, you know. Anyways, the next argument, cosmic delegation of why God is destiny. Free will is the signature of divine trust. Argument. In Islam, God offered the trust, al-amana, to the heavens and earth, and they declined. Okay? Man accepted it. That trust is free will, the power to choose, to fail, to grow. It is both an honor and a burden. The test is what justifies this cosmic risk. That means, excuse me, this cosmic risk. Now, what this means is that you are an advanced technology. How this technology used also suggests how advanced it is. Here it shares a passage from the Holy Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, passage 3372. Indeed, we offered the trust to the heavens and the earth, but man undertook it. Indeed, he was unjust and ignorant. Pointing to original sin, I guess. So here's an example. Imagine being handed the steering wheel of a ship that angels refused to drive. That's what free will is. The test is what proves whether you were worthy of that trust. It's kind of like you're being tested because you were given something, you were trusted with something. We go to the next one. The test creates eternity's weight. This is here it says esoteric reasoning. Argument. Free will and testing give your actions eternal weight. A finite action here echoes infinitely in the hereafter. The stakes are unbelievably high because time itself is a womb that births eternal identity. Wow! Wow! What a next level metaphor. Time is the womb where after this life, when you die, you're kind of born to your eternal identity, I guess. That's, I gotta, that's noteworthy. Here it says there's a quote shared from Kierkegaard. The greatest hazard of all, to risk and not be willing to risk, is the greatest loss. Is the greatest loss. An example is in this world, a moment of sincere repentance or a final act of love before death may shape your soul forever. Without testing, the soul would never carve its eternal shape. My God. Ooh, ooh, goosebumps. Without testing, the soul would never carve its eternal shape. Wow, wow, wow. It's as if you're being tested as a simulated entity. So, in some sense, you're carving the shape of your eternal life. What that means is how you live here suggests what kind of eternity you access after you want. Anyways, we go to the next. Testing enables the manifestation of divine names. This is one that's very close to me. I understand this very deeply because I had a dream that I was walking. There was this giant Quran, and I was walking between the pages on a table, and you're walking underneath, like between the table, like through the book, you know, through the pages of the book, like always. So, anyways, argument. So this is theological metaphysics. Testing enables the manifestation of divine names. God has 99 names in Islamic theology. This is true. The merciful, the just, the forgiving, and more. 96 more names. These names are not abstract labels. They manifest through human experience. The test is the world where these names become known. Example, you can only know God as the forgiving if you tasted guilt. You only see him as the provider when you feared scarcity. The test makes the unseen names of God real to the heart. So, guys, this is a very profound one. Let me tell you why. Because when man asks, like if you were to ask, why did God even need to create a world for beings to be tested? It's because God, how do I say it? It's to give an opportunity for the for the creation to have a relationship with the creator. Somebody might be like, why did God create evil? Why did God create messed up entities? How else would you know that it can be fixed? How else would you know that there is a higher power? How else if there was no lower power? How else would you know the true value of the original power if you were not sinning, if you were not being tested? That means God did not want anything from human beings. It was the mercy of the higher power to be like, all right, out of all my creation, oh you man, I give you system admin privileges. We don't have the system admin privilege of moderating the simulation. Like you might make an argument for this, like, yo man, what about that trillionaire who's like controlling economy, right? I'll be like, sure, like that guy's trying to be a moderator, but that it's still a human being. We're not designed to moderate like reality unless it's what God wills. But I'm trying to tell you that you have a system admin privilege as a user in the system, but you don't have the moderator privilege. Like, okay, you have it in small scales, like a parent, like a father moderates the family. Okay, you know, the mother and father moderate the children. Like there is moderation, but I'm telling you, we have no, our system have admin privilege is to connect and contact the manufacturer, the creator. What that means is your heart is like your phone, and your sincerity is like you calling, and who picks up the phone is not you. Like, do you know how diabolical it is to come and tell creatures that are in a world filled with such unknown, unique design that, buddy, it's hollow. Like, how dare you? The simulation might be hollow, but the simulation is not the original world. If you treat the simulation as the original, then shame on you. Like, how dare you? Anyways, we go to the next. Why is God testing us? Contrast is the canvas of meaning. Guys, I'm reading this stuff from AI. I make it clear when I'm reading something. Contrast is a canvas of meaning. Existential aesthetics. What is the argument? Without darkness, light has no contrast. Without choice, truth has no clarity. The test is the canvas of contrast. God made a world where both good and evil exist so that your decision to choose good is meaningful and radiant. You understand? I'll give you an example. Imagine I go into imagine, I'm a younger guy, and I'm still, oblivious to the extremeness of my desires, of the impracticality of the extremeness of my desires. Imagine I'm still young, you know. And as a young guy, imagine like I'm a young guy in high school, and suddenly I enter this room, and like 20 beautiful women just suddenly walk up to me as a young guy, as me, the young guy. Okay. Now imagine if all of them, like, okay, guys, why am I not like? I mean, it's extreme. I wanted to. Okay, I went to Amsterdam. Okay, and I visited all of Amsterdam, if you know what I mean. And how do I say it? If I enter a room and 20 people come up and start complimenting me, okay, let me tell you a story I just remembered. Holy shit. Um, I, for some time, I attended university in London, Ontario, right after high school. I went to a dormitory there. It was called, what was it called? It was mid something. There's a dorm in Western Ontario, midway, mid something. Okay, that I forget it now, but I was in that dorm, and it was kind of like this long hallway with 30 rooms on. Is that if somebody comes and tells you something out of nowhere without knowing you, you see the artificialness in it. So, what is making it real? If I had known those people, you understand, my whole behavioral performance in there would be completely different. You understand? Anyways, this is like some random story, and I gotta kind of like show you guys I'm not a robot. Can you guys still hear me? I mean, is this audible? Somebody's saying your sound is gone. How's that possible? Oh my God, the input volume keeps going down on its own. Okay. I don't know. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. I don't know. God, I pray for the most advanced recording studio and also for the most advanced audience. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. I was saying like some next level stuff. And unfortunately, I guess the input, see what's happening here is that the input volume, okay, the input volume automatically keeps going down. And I don't know why. See, yeah, it automatically goes down. Like, I don't know how to tell. Okay. Anyways. So, guys, you weren't hearing the arguments I was reading? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Why we have choices. All right, guys, did you hear the contrast is the canvas of meaning? Like, did you hear that part? Did the viewers hear me read that part? All right, whatever. So here it's giving an example. Think of a masterpiece painting. Without shadow, there's no depth. Without tests, your goodness will be like a painting with no color, no soul. So, anyways, guys, after hearing me talk about these, you shouldn't have this view anymore of like, why is there suffering? Why is this a hard place? Why is there difficulty? Why are there moments when I'm low or, high or, like depressed or happy and all of this? The contrast is necessary, okay, for you to realize the value of the opposite. That means if I was in a world, like if we were, like this is going to be strange, but if we were in a world where everybody was good, there would be no good. Do you understand? It would just be like everybody's behaving the same, right? So the morality, like there's a value there, anyways. Okay, people are saying no, so I didn't, so it wasn't recorded. Okay, let me double check the input. It keeps going down. I don't get it. Okay, I'll just stay on this page then. Yeah, it just keeps. Yeah, weird. I gotta start recording on my phone, I guess. Okay, guys, I'm gonna read for you the last part that I didn't read. For the love of God, please. Microphone, please. Okay, whatever. It's meant to be. Try to use the car's Bluetooth, but whatever. Okay. So this is important, guys. Hear me out. This is the last thing I didn't read. I thought I did because I didn't know what you heard. So the eighth argument: contrast is the canvas of meaning. Existential aesthetics. Without darkness, light has no contrast. Without choice, truth has no clarity. The test is the canvas of contrast. God made a world where both good and evil exist so that your decision to choose good is meaningful and radiant. An example: think of a masterpiece painting. Without shadow, there's no depth. Without tests, your goodness would be like a painting with no color, no soul. All right. Uh, all right, guys, whatever. I got to focus on the future here. So, where I'm going with all of this, so now we looked at some arguments of why God is testing man. It makes us acknowledge that the elements in the system are necessary. Um, for me, if I can now kind of bring it back to society and civilization, the story that I'm telling myself is that pretty much, from where the human beings are consciously beginning, there was a reaction of our earliest ancestors in realizing that the outer realm has unknown variables and known variables, but in the inner realm, we can justify the outer realms only through known variables. What does this mean? This means, like, imagine the early human beings opening their eyes and, in some sense, freaking out, being like, what is this? Where am I? Why is this so vast? Why is this so big? Why are there violent animals? Like, why? And so, because they couldn't make sense of such vastness, the next option, the reaction to it. Like what happens when an animal is cornered? It gets scared and it becomes violent. Okay, and so it's kind of like the overwhelming intensity of the world cornered the human intelligence to a degree. It had to kind of react, and its reaction was a narrative. Okay, so what I mean by this is that it was easier to live in your own comfortable story. That what that means is it's easier for me to assume something about you rather than to come and understand you, because there is no disagreements in my assumption. That means if I assume somebody is a good person, I'll be like, okay, done. Value proposition given to the object, to the entity. Okay, but if I actually get to know the person, I will see no person I have ever seen can just be my snapshot impression of them. To acknowledge human limitation. All right, so anyways, guys, it's I've reached that point where the input volume of the sound settings is like, it's like telling me to, like, okay, end the lecture. Anyways, my fellow species, I don't know any of you, but I am a human being, uh, and we're all here as human beings. And the most advanced thing I thought of was as like, okay, go into the species, report to the species, and share the inner reality that only my DNA is giving me access to kind of share these patterns with others. But the main intent of it is that ultimately, when somebody communicates, they are guided by some vision of value. That vision of value for me is that pretty much there's four things in this life keeping me in this life, just when it comes to at least my code. One is, how advanced can this cell be? Which is like one of my fascinations. Like, how advanced can I be as a being? The next thing in my mind is like, how advanced can my species be? Like, in my inner realms, I can see different probabilities. You know, I can see different probabilities. But why is it that when I look at humanity in the external realms, it's like the intensity? It's like we're way more advanced behind our eyes than in front of it. So how do we advance in front of it? By, in some sense, becoming even more advanced behind our eyes. So I think is advanced is basic. And the next thing is, what is the most advanced state of the world? Like, you cannot be a human being in a simulation and not be fascinated by what's going to happen to the simulation and all angles to it, right? So I'm like this human being being like, okay, while I'm here, it's fascinating to me to get to know my most advanced, what would the most advanced expression and state of our species look like? Most advanced world look like with all of us in it? And what would the most advanced relationship with the original power that created the simulation be? Now, the solution is actually one of the problems has been solved, which is the fourth one, the most important, right? That in some sense, the most advanced relationship man can have with a higher power is to realize he is the lower power, which in religion translates as repentance. For me, I've had before becoming religious truly, I had many spiritual experiences. I had experiences where I thought for a decade, for years, I was working with the mods. What I mean by mods is that they are like authorities on sectors of manifestation, right? And if you act in accordance to that sector, you appear in that mods space. But the but anyways, the point is not the mods. The great wisdom is directly go to the system admin. That means it's like if I created a Discord server and I appointed moderators and there were like loads of users, right? It's as if Islam is saying, yo, don't go to the moderators. The moderators can have beef with the system admin. Go directly to the system admin. That means, or if you are a simulated being, pay attention to just the original. Now, the clue about the original is that it's not limb bound to the simulated. So if somebody says, hey, can you understand God from the world? I'll be like, no, I cannot understand God. I cannot define God by it's like it's like a cat inside a box defining the hand of that pulls the cat out of the box. As long as the cat's just started the box is the reality. But that means if you know it's a box, the reality is not the actual reality, like the main reality. So this is I guess one person's suggestion. Immediately in whatever world you find the most advanced power source to it and immediately connect to that. In this world we're in, that original power source is not like a resource, is not like, yo man, we found like oil in our lands. It's not like that. It's not like that. The original power source is the acknowledgement of the higher power. So what that means is if there's a master swordsman and you are like this novice swordsman and you're showing off in front of this master swordsman and the master swordsman silently sitting in the room, right? It's like noticing, okay, there is an power greater than mine, which is a reform in positional behavior. So in my view, I'm like, okay, as a simulated being, establish a connection to original power, the admin. That means for someone who wanted to build an advanced civilization for the longest time, I don't know if I know any other human being that has been obsessed with an advanced civilization as much as myself, right? But that um, I wanted to build the advanced civilization, but I hadn't realized the power source and I hadn't really looked at reality in the sense that not all outcomes are based on the conscious domains of man's. It's not just based on known variables. That means I might have known expectations on the known variables of that have made me kind of assume that I know the world. But when you see there's unknown variables, and when you see that those unknown variables surpass human control, it's like it's like this is going to be the most ridiculous thing I say. It's like we're inside an Uber and we think we're driving. The Uber driver, it's like, okay, listens to where we're going, but the Uber driver is actually not an Uber driver. It's like, imagine a limousine driver taking you to the meeting of your life, right? Which is in some sense, they asked Muhammad Ali, this boxer, what are you going to do after you retire? This young girl came in this video on YouTube and asked that. And Muhammad Ali said, I have 21 years. I don't know why he said that specific number, but he's like, I got 21 years to prepare for my meeting with God, with the system admin. Now, I'm not Christian, but if you're Christian, you're acknowledging Christ as God. Okay? Now, I want you to also consider after, like, if Christ is a connection point to you, to the system admin here, right, in the world, I'm saying that you need to also consider after this life, you meet the Father, if in this life you met the Son. But because I'm Muslim, just based on how I'm seeing the reality, I cannot accept any form in the world as God. So when I say establish a relationship with the higher power, I'm not saying get one. I'm saying get to know the limitation. Because if we're not honest about our limitations, what can we honestly see? How can we honestly acknowledge the limitless? Anyways, my species, don't freak out that we're all in a simulated testing zone inside a divine surveillance state. Rather, it doesn't matter what world you were found in, you found yourself. Wonder about its time, wonder about what's possible. And it doesn't matter where you started from if you understand what's possible. Thank you for listening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. A'udhu billah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed and unnecessary ignorance. Rabbi Ghfirli, my Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive my species for all the sins that it is conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. God, guide me to the direct path. May the most advanced guide us in the most advanced way, because it's not alone. We no longer have the privilege of just being like human beings are the most advanced thing in this world. It's obvious the most advanced thing would be that which is beyond the world. If I'm a box, what's outside of the box is more advanced than me. Anyways, thank you for listening.